Kirsten, there is a big camp of people that say IBS doesn't exist. And I'm sure you face this all the time, but what is your, I guess not your argument against it, but what do you say when you get that?
Yeah, I hear this all the time from various different sources, and I think mostly from, the patient side. When you have IBS, you have these very physical problems, they're real, and then you go to the doctor, there's no one test for it, and you come back and you get told, oh, nothing's wrong with you, all your tests are negative, so straight away it doesn't feel like a real condition. And then what you have is a lot of influencers online trying to sell their cure to it, basically, and they go, oh no, IBS isn't real, that's why the doctors couldn't help you, but I'll help you heal your gut and things like this. And it's kind of really going into that vulnerability where someone who's got these very real digestive problems, they haven't been given any help or next steps by the doctor, and then so it ties in with them feeling like, oh, I haven't had a diagnosis, surely I can't have this IBS thing, it's not real, it's not a real condition. So yeah, it is very much a real condition. There's just a few issues around how we, I guess, understand it. So it's what we call a syndrome, which is a collection of symptoms that tie or hang out together, let's say. And unfortunately with syndromes, and what makes it a syndrome is we don't know exactly what causes it, and we don't know what cures it either, and that's why it's not a disease, but it is very much a syndrome. There's a medical definition. If anyone wants to look up the Rome criteria, it will come up straight away in any Google search, and that's worldwide recognized. There's multiple medical guidelines for this syndrome about how to diagnose it, what to do with it, so it is very much a real condition. It's just how we, I guess, understand it is a little bit, it's more confusing than a straightforward diagnosis of something else, like a bacterial infection, for example.
Yeah, and I guess it'd feel quite, unfair, if you're feeling all these symptoms. And I guess I have to say off the bat, I haven't had anything. Like, I can't speak from an experience of, I have had, gut problems or IBS or anything like that. But, you said like there's no one cure that's like, all right, boom, let's go, it's gone. So it can feel unfair when people are saying it doesn't exist, but you're like, but these problems that I face do exist. And I've worked halfway through your book, as I was saying before, and you did talk about your story, and I'd love you to unpack it. I guess just to kind of show what you've gone through and maybe what it's like to go through IBS. Because I also think, and this is just off the cuff, but I think a lot of people may potentially have a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to say that people may have IBS, but because I don't know any stats around it, but I feel like there may be a lot of people, and even just in my circle, that have problems, but they just think it's just how they are. Oh, I just can't have that. I just can't eat that. Oh, if I eat late at night, that's just what happens. Or like sometimes I'm not regular, and that like it's just because I ate this and that. But it kind of sounds like IBS when you dive into it. So, all saying that, like, what was your experience with it, or do you still have it?
Yeah, so I'm happy to share it, even though it can be a little bit too much information for some people, I guess. But it is really common. You're right, 1 in 10 people have it, and I would probably say more than that, because obviously talking about poop, bloating, stomach pain is not something we normally do, or most people, unless you're a dietitian or a doctor, when we talk about it over dinner like it's nothing, which is pretty disgusting for everybody outside of that medical profession. But yeah, super common. So my, I guess, story started probably when I look back at it, and I'm even always reflecting now, probably when I was like 18, 19, if I'm being honest, and through kind of my late teens and all of my 20s, I suffered with a lot of anxiety, depression, low mood and things like that. And I was becoming more aware of it because I was then at the age of about 18 going to university and studying in a healthcare qualification, so of course we look into this. But during that time I started suffering with mild digestive problems, let's say, to start with. So I would get quite bloated, a lot of loose stools at times, then constipation, and it sounds like, really, I don't mean to sound so blasé now, but at the time I was like, it's probably nothing, because, my weight was fine. I didn't end up in hospital. I know that's a really low bar, but it didn't, I was able to relatively get through my degree. So it wasn't that sick, so it was just always there, but it never really was that bad, let's say, but it was pretty bad now I'm on the other side. And then eventually we were studying GI conditions at university, and I was like, you know what, I actually do have a lot of these symptoms. This is maybe not that normal, or maybe I should at least go and look into it. And my great-grandmother had celiac disease, so this is a different condition involving gluten, so different condition, which maybe is a podcast for another time. But essentially my whole family have got autoimmune conditions, and when you have autoimmune conditions in your family, you are much higher risk of getting it yourself. So I thought, I'll just go to see the doctor. And I went to see the doctor on campus, who is a GP, family medicine doctor, same thing if you're outside of UK, Australia. And he kind of was nice enough person, but he almost like rolled his eyes and kind of said, you know what, it sounds like you're really stressed out at the minute. It's probably just stress. And he even said to me, you know, I'm going to write something a little bit more than what you've told me on the medical form, so that they will take it seriously and do the blood test for you. But as though like I wasn't like sick enough to get the celiac disease blood test at the time. And I went away and I was just like, you know, it's probably nothing then. I never bothered getting the blood test for celiac disease or anything. And then I let things continue on. And I qualified as dietitian, so this is almost like, and I like sharing this, it was somewhat about embarrassing that I didn't know better because I was already a dietitian, but I like sharing it because I think some people, when they've got digestive problems, they think, oh, I'm so stupid, I should have known this. I was literally a dietitian and in this, you know, area, and I didn't do anything about it. So anyway, time rolled on, and I ended up getting really like fatigued and tired and things like that, and I ended up with a lot of neuromuscular problems. They actually thought I had MS at a point, so I had lots of pain in my arms, other symptoms, and I was under investigation. Nothing came back positive, and then it was one doctor said, you know what, we'll just run an autoimmune panel, and it came back positive for celiac disease, and I mean like it was through the roof for celiac. So I'd had these digestive problems for celiac. I'll fast forward a little bit, but long story short, I went gluten-free and I obviously felt a lot better for celiac disease. But then symptoms sort of kind of just crept back up again, and celiac was really under control. And then it transpired that I was actually had IBS. And I think basically I'd had such a disrupted gut, plus the mental health side of things for so long, and both of these things we know can be linked to IBS. I now had this permanent condition of irritable bowel syndrome. And in those early days, in my early 20s, which is when you have like literally no responsibility for most people, and I just qualified, so I didn't have a lot of money, but I had like all this money for myself. I should have been out partying or, you know, free from my 20s. And honestly, Brock, I remember looking at pictures of myself and being like, oh, I look ugly, I look, you know, the way I felt about my body, I was so bloated. I would try and restrict my diet, so it's like a borderline eating disorder because I was just bloated all the time, felt uncomfortable, really low energy levels, and again that depression as well. And I don't think people realise how bad it was, because I was very much a person who'd turn up at work with a smile on my face, but then in my own time it was really impacting me. And I think it was about a year in where I started to really specialise in GI health. And I remember just sort of almost having like this internal chat for myself. And I was like, Kirsten, you are not a medical anomaly. You are literally seeing all thousands of research studies there about this low FODMAP diet, the probiotic, things like why, because I tried some of these to a certain extent, why is it not working for you? And I realised I'm not some sort of special medical anomaly. I'd had all the tests done under the sun. It wasn't anything else. And it wasn't so much that I'm going to try a random diet, a random probiotic, is that I hadn't tailored that to my symptoms, and I also hadn't been consistent with it. So once I started that, I was able to, not overnight, took time, but to see huge life-changing differences. So I'm sort of the other side of that, and obviously that has then inspired me to take that approach and help other people with my speciality. Obviously I am actually qualified in this as well, but I've had that personal experience to not just be, I don't mean this horribly to any other health professional, but I'm not going to be like, here's a diet, off you go. Like, so it's quite patronising sometimes, or have you not tried a high fibre diet or things like that, which I'm sure we'll dive into in a minute. I get it. It is not that easy, and that's where I've kind of then got that, as I said, inspiration to really help other people.
So what were, if you don't mind, or if you don't mind speaking about them, like what were some of the things that you tried that maybe had some success or that didn't have some success as you were still upskilling and figuring things out, like, you know, when you had these symptoms?
Yeah, so I tried antidepressants because I obviously had the depression anyway, and this is one of the treatments that can help. Low FODMAP diet, which is a diet which we reduce all of the trigger foods essentially for a short period of time to identify intolerances. But I kind of did it probably for about 10 days, and then I was like, this isn't working enough, and it's quite a difficult to diet when you've got no one keeping you accountable. So I'd kind of come in and out of it, and I felt in my mind I'd been doing it for months but not really got any kind of symptom improvement. Trying to get rid of fibre, having loads more fibre, all these things that are good for gut health. So bringing in like fermented foods, probiotics, loads, and I was just getting more and more bloated. You name it, medications, things like antispasmodic, which is to stop your gut kind of spasming and giving you the pain, but that actually wasn't one of my symptoms at the time, but I was like, I'm going to try it anyway. Other supplements, vitamin D, glutamine, everything. And then even going to the gym, because I remember thinking, oh, maybe I'm actually not bloated, maybe this is in my head, maybe I've just got loads of, maybe I'm skinny fat, because that was a sort of all the range term at that time. Bearing in mind I was pretty much a size 6, underweight, borderline eating disorder at this point. So going to the gym just to try and add more muscle, to try and flatten my stomach, you name it, I tried everything.
So what are some things to, like, I know it's quite a hard question to answer, to just be like, just don't do this and you'll be fine. But so we have to take it with a grain of salt. But what are some things, like, or best practices that we can do to try and prevent from running into IBS symptoms or from finding ourselves in a potential situation like yours?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, in terms of when someone's got IBS, there's obviously no way to cure it, but what we do know is that you can really manage it really well, so preventing those flare-ups. So first things first, stop being obsessed with diet. I think as soon as we talk about IBS, everyone's like, what's my dietary trigger? What diet do I need to go on? What do I need to avoid? So some of the things that we really overlook is like sleep, for example. We know that good quality sleep, it's not just the quality, it's the quantity as well, is directly impacted, and this is shown in the research, about how many days you will then suffer with symptoms that week. So we're figuring out what part of the diet we need to cut out, which is actually really complicated, which we'll come on to in a minute, and yet we've not bothered to even get a good night's sleep, which is like what I'd consider more of a low-hanging fruit. So sleep will also help what we call your ability to deal with stress and anxiety, because it actually increases your stress threshold, and stress will impact your gut and make it more sensitive. So sleep, looking at stress management, and that can be, I think stress is often misleading, because I think we are, as humans, pretty good at, if we had something traumatic or a really crap day at work, we know that that was stressful. But a lot of people I'm working with are having this like stress seeping in every single day, just a little bit, and it could be like a highly stressed work situation. It could be that we've got young kids, and we're trying to do that and the business and keep your partner happy, and that is just seeping in, and it's become their norm. So being aware of that and then building in strategies, so things like just a daily 10-minute meditation, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but the research is there. So looking at sleep, looking at the stress management, whether that, and if you are somebody, by the way, who thinks that they might have something that's diagnosable like depression or anxiety, go to the doctor and get, medications, go and get treatment. But there's a lot of people, I'd say, in between who they do have stress, but they're almost in denial, like in a deniable kind of situation. And then looking at exercise. And again, we are really good at, obviously people listen to your podcast, are following you a lot of the time, they're interested in exercise. Yes, we need to go into the gym. Yes, we need to be building muscle and stuff. But a lot of people I see are going to the gym diligently 3 times a week, or they're hitting the high rocks class at 5 a.m. and then they're not moving their body at all in between. And then they're wondering why they're getting symptoms. So I guess it's to stop you going into flare-ups. Stop thinking up here and come back down to like, have you rested? Are you in this what we call fight or flight response continually? Stress. What can we do about that? Because we often can't change our lifestyle, but we can change how we respond to that. And then move your body every day. And like you'll have a different opinion in terms of like aesthetics and health and things like that as a trainer. But as a gut health dietitian, I don't care if your movement is that you did go to the gym and you did a workout, great, or you did some gardening. But either way, you need to move your body every single day. Otherwise, your gut simply won't function. And they are almost, if you think about it, the basic requirements of a human body. And then dietary-wise, again, instead of thinking, what can we cut out? A lot of my clients, and I'd say like 60 to 70% of them at the minute, what can you bring in? You're all about cutting things out, but the same people are not having 3 meals per day. They're not having the recommended 30 grams of fibre per day. They're obsessed with having like the proteins on point, and other elements might be on point, but they're actually just not having enough for their gut. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And there's a few things that I want to jump into. Like, so I guess specifically with sleep, what are the recommendations? Because everyone hears sleep more, and just go to bed earlier or stop doom scrolling, which is actually really sound advice, because that's usually what it's sad how many people are like nothing's really keeping them awake but themselves, or their ability to like turn off their phone and put it in another room. And I speak from personal experience. I'm not perfect, but yeah, is it 7 to 9 hours? Is that your recommendation? Is it more? Is it less? Does it depend on the person?
Yeah, so it really depends on the person, but the recommendations are 7 to 9 hours. And I have so many people go to me, and I think it's coming from some of these like health tech guys who are making like millions. They're like, oh no, I don't need that. Like I'm good at 6
Oh
hours.
yeah, like I'm
okay,
I'm the special genetic type that only needs 6. Yeah.
exactly, or like 5 or 4. And I was like, right, good for you. Like this doesn't really exist. It's very, very rare. So
very
yeah, the
rare.
recommendations are 7 to 9 hours per night, but it really does depend on the person. So if you are a younger adult, you might need more towards the 9 hours. If you are working out a lot, you're going to need more towards those 9 hours. And a lot of people get mixed up as well between being in bed and sleep. Just because you go to bed for 7 hours does not mean you're getting 7 hours sleep. So, I mean, my recommendation on like a general sense would be trying to aim for 8, because I think that's mostly realistic. And then at the very minimum, you should be getting that 7. But that's without being able to track it. And we can use things like Oura rings, Whoop bands as well, to help you get some more data. But again, for a lot of people, as you said, they're doom scrolling, they're going to bed at midnight. So instead of going and investing in one of these devices, how about we just stop doom scrolling? Or even reduce doom scrolling from 1 hour to half an hour. So those small changes can make a huge difference, and they're much more realistic.
Yeah, I've got I'm not too big on New Year resolutions, but I do think it's a good opportunity or a chance to reflect on how your year went and what you could have done better. And mine was sleep, and it's kind of a tricky grey area because I have 2 young children. But mostly what keeps me up at night is me trying to get my work done while they're asleep. And I have this goal, and I've hit it every day of work since I've been back to go to bed before 11, and then we'll wake up around 7. So it's allowing me 8 hours. And sometimes I'll land just under, but like I'll get in between 7 to 8, and I've even got a bit over 8 sometimes. I use my Whoop, but I don't really look at it because I don't want to obsess over it too much. Like I know if I'm well slept or not. But I've found that I've been much more focused at work. In the gym, I've been hitting PBs. On the mats, I've felt better. Doing BJJ, and it's just like, it's such a simple thing that we can do. And I'm no gut health expert or anything, but I just mean like in terms of improving your quality of life, not just in the gym to get jacked and be strong, but it does help. But just I find at work my overall mood is much better. I can tolerate more. Being a father and things like that. Like our 3-year-old is just being a massive tantrum girl at the moment. So like being able to handle those a bit more. You definitely do, like, I don't know, I just feel a bit more like invincible. Maybe that's a good way to put it. But what piece of advice do you have for stresses that can't go away? Like really high stress jobs, or children, family, relationship problems, whatever. Like we can't just say, all right, just manage your stress. Oh, sweet. Like I'll just like not have my kids anymore. Like that doesn't, that's not good advice. So like, what are some ways to try and manage that? You mentioned a 10-minute meditation. Are there any other things that we can do?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to tie it into the sleep you just mentioned, because it's the same thing with that, right? Like, I mean, even if we've got to do life. So it's about taking the science and how do we adapt it to life. And, I'm not going to be the 19-year-old influencer telling you, guys, we all have to be in bed. And then we have like a 3-hour morning routine. And then like we have life, I think even the other week I got up at like 5 in the morning because I was like, maybe this is the thing now. I'm going to have to get up at 5 in the morning to get my work done. And both kids were like 10 past 5. Hi, mummy.
Seriously? Yeah. I've done that too many times. I've like given up on that. I've had to. It's just...
Exactly. So we have to be realistic. So with that then, so we'll start with sleep. So I'd say to you, with the sleep element, as you said, it will actually improve your stress ability. So it increases what we call the stress threshold. I can't even get words out. Stress threshold. And what I mean by that, the best example I can give you, say you're going to work in a car, and you are in a traffic queue, right? Okay. And you do that today, but last night you had a great night's sleep. Your body is less likely to go into what we call the fight or flight mode in that situation, because it's able to deal with that stress. That means your gut is less likely to get irritated and react. Tomorrow, if you have this exact same situation, but the night before you slept poorly, your body's threshold goes down. So you're much more likely to go into, so same day, but you just can't cope with it. So stress and sleep go hand in hand with that one. So that's why I always think when we even look at all the pillars of gut health, we look at nutrition, movement, sleep, stress. Stress is the big one. Sleep is the big one because it helps us deal with all those other pillars first. And then in the day, looking at meditation can really help. And I was probably the person to push back on this, because to me it sounds woo-woo. I don't like woo-woo. I like research.
Yeah, personally, I have the same feeling.
Exactly. But as the most skeptical person, it's made a huge difference to my life, because what meditation does is it uses what we call neuroplasticity in the brain. So it uses your brain's ability to learn new pathways. So for example, if you are going and your young kid is having a tantrum and you're already tired and you're stressed, you're going to deal with that not so well, because your monkey brain, as they call it, comes on, and you can get, maybe really agitated, really angry, maybe act in a way that you're not proud of. You're not trying to calm them down, you're just like shouting or whatever. But actually, if you use meditation, which is 10 minutes that you're doing every day, not necessarily exactly at that time, but your brain is learning new pathways of calm. So i.e. in those stressful situations, instead of your brain going down the stress pathway and irritating your gut, getting the gut moving, you're going down a calm way, and it's helping with that. And interestingly, I said I wouldn't talk about jiu-jitsu so much on this podcast, but we were joking before, like how obsessed we are.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Like trying to bring it in. We're trying to reel you into the cult, guys.
What's your favorite submission?
So interestingly, in jiu-jitsu, what I find is that people, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu is what I'm talking about here, people do think of it as being this like fight constantly. Actually, when you train, what you learn to do is actually slow your brain down. And it's particularly really good for those people who find meditation, where you're being asked to sit down for 10 minutes in silence and focus on yourself. A lot of people find that very difficult, but sometimes there's other ways, I guess, to be mindful. Jiu-jitsu is one of them, where it actually trains your focus. So yes, in that time you're getting the exercise, or in the meditation you're getting that calm, but it actually teaches this neuroplasticity so that you can then take it into other parts of your day. And a lot of people say to me, 10 minutes a day, oh, this is another thing on my to-do list, or the exercise, the jiu-jitsu. But it gives you time back, because if you're stressed, if you're tired, that will reduce your quality of work, it will increase the mistakes you make, it will increase your number of sick days, etc. To the point where they make jokes about it, about millennials in like Silicon Valley and places like this, where historically those people working there in America would work like 100-hour weeks. They're now bringing in like yoga sessions and meditation, and it's not through the goodness of their heart the employer is doing this, it's because they make more money. And the research is there because their workers, they work harder and they work better. And then the other thing you can also do, if you have the ability to do it, especially if you're self-employed, or you have the ability to change your hours, is you can actually look to see what you work as best in terms of if you're a later person or an earlier person. So around 40% of the population will naturally be an early person, and 40% will naturally be a later. And if that's you, then that can help just manage your stress as well, because your brain will be more awake. So for me, for instance, my dream job would be starting at 6 a.m. because I am up at the crack of dawn. I'm just a morning person. But if you want to meet or do something at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m, no, it's not happening.
You'll be yawning through it. Yeah.
Exactly, wouldn't be great. Whereas some people are naturally later people. So again, a small adjustment doesn't mean you're working any less hours, doesn't mean your actual day changes technically, but it means that your body is more able to deal with that stress.
Yeah, I've definitely found that thing on the mats where I've found that it's made me a more calm person, or more kind of like knowing when to be calm and when not to be calm. Like obviously, when you're rolling, if you're spazzing 24/7, you just get tired and then you just get beaten. So you kind of learn when to control that energy. I haven't really thought about how that affects me in my life, but my wife does always say like nothing annoys you. And I think it's just because for me, nothing's really that big of a deal. And especially when you do jiu-jitsu, when you have someone literally like trying to break your arm or choke you, like that's a problem. You know what I mean? But if someone just, says that, for training 17 years, my body looks average and I could achieve it in 6 months, I'm like, I'm not losing my mind over that, like that's not a very big deal. So how does exercise impact IBS? Like you talked about it going, it doesn't matter if you're gardening or if you're lifting weights, but like what does it actually do for you?
Yeah, great question. So exercise really helps with a number of things. So it helps with the mobility in your gut. So if you have got a slower gut, sluggish gut, things like bloating, constipation, any movement is going to really help with just moving things along basically with that. The other thing we know is that people who exercise regularly have a better microbiota profile. So the gut bugs, which are linked to generally better gut health, so which is a little bit more broader in terms of what we're talking about here, but still this seems to be a better profile. And then the other thing is that it does seem to directly improve symptoms, and there's a couple of studies on this, one looking at running, and then another one that people always quote around yoga, doing this around twice a week can really help with improving symptoms. So it doesn't really matter, I guess it's just about the exercise, because yoga and then running are two very different exercises, and that's what there's a lot of people who will quote, and it really irritates me, saying, oh, you must do yoga if you have IBS. And actually what the research is showing is that any exercise really is good, apart from potentially high intensity exercise, so something like your high rocks class, which is intense. But then even like, as you know, like if me and you lifted the same weights, that's a very different intensity. So it's very difficult for us to say, not that I'd be able to lift the same weights as a man anyway, in my current training regime, that is. But if I think one person's going to find that intensity very different to another person, depending on how fit you are, how strong you are, your age. So with that one, I would just say, just see how it goes. So for example, if you are someone who's already very fit, maybe doing a couple of spinning classes even per week, if you really want to do, or runs, it's going to be no problem. But if you are somebody who doesn't do any exercise regularly, then that probably isn't a good idea to start with that, with something high intense, or jiu-jitsu, definitely not. It would be, start with your walking, start with your weights. When weights are particularly good, because I wouldn't say that intense, it's kind of a slow movement, and you've got the control if you need to leave, in case anything gets flared up. But unfortunately, a lot of the research we have in gut function sort of really speeding up and becoming, not great in terms of you might end up running to the bathroom, is more to do with high endurance athletes, which we are not. And they're they've got a very different profile, and they're doing like triathlons, and they're taking lots of supplements with that. There's a lot of race day anxiety, and that's a whole diet and regime in itself to reduce that. But that's what annoys me, I think, when some of these claims get put out there about, oh, don't do this, it'd be bad for your IBS, don't do that. I don't think we're there with the research. I think really it comes down to a more simplified approach, that doing something every day, walking is great, and then probably weights would be fine, running is fine, all these things are okay, as long as you're not doing something really intense every single day, and as long as you're not just jumping from 0 to 100. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So is there, like, I know you've mentioned the endurance athletes and, maybe not doing high rocks, because it could be too intense. Is there such thing as like a too mobile gut? Like, is that what they are doing when they're doing high rocks or doing the like strength endurance events? Because like it's just too much. Like it actually adds more stress instead of having the opposite effect.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen a number of issues with this. I mean, like endurance athletes, we've known this for years because they have their teams of dietitians, right? And it becomes, I think Paula Radcliffe, who's a British runner, famously did actually one of her marathons have to go to the toilet literally on the side of the road, and then continue going because it impacted her gut so much. But again, even within endurance athletes, some seem to not be impacted at all, and some seem to be have issues a lot. So it really varies. But we're now seeing in the general public, because of course people who are probably in their 30s above are starting to take up things like this CrossFit, high rocks, jiu-jitsu. It's all really, really intense exercise. I mean, just to give context, anyone who uses a root band, if I do a jiu-jitsu session, if I go to a spin class, which I haven't been to for years, it would be like a 6, maybe 5 out of 20, and a jiu-jitsu would be like 15. So it's really, really intense. And then people are getting quite hooked on it, so they're doing it not just once or twice a week, it's like 5-6 times a week. And this is where we are seeing problems, because essentially you're getting somebody who's older than a professional athlete, and I hate to break it to you, but at 30 that would be, it is older than a professional athlete. But rough. You're training, it is, isn't it? And especially when we get somebody coming in at like 19 and you can't get near them, it's very different physically. But we are seeing people training like an athlete essentially, but they're not treating their bodies like an athlete, and that's where the problem is. So you can train like that, but then we also need to be looking at the 9 hours sleep. We need to be looking at what electrolytes do you need, and also calorie intake is a big one. So a lot of people are over exercising, under fueling, and what happens is the metabolism will drop down. And then I've seen a number of people, both men and women in clinic, who've got really bad constipation, and basically their body fat has become too low. They're physically not eating anywhere near enough calories, and they'll see it in other ways. So they'll see it in things like their ability to sleep, in their sex drive, their ability to recover from exercises. Immune system might go down as well, and often they haven't really caught on because their weight stays the same. So it's almost like the body's in survival mode, and that's where it causes quite a lot of digestive problems.
Yeah, I think I've definitely got caught in that myself. Like, I have a high tendency to move. And sometimes, I remember as a personal trainer, I literally couldn't just like keep up with my, like when I was face to face on the gym floor, I would get around 30,000 steps a day, and at this time I was training twice a day. I don't know, I just because you work in a gym, like, you know, a client cancels, oh hey, I'm just gonna go do some arms and abs that I wasn't planning on doing. But I would literally have to eat like Guzman Gomez, like my lunch break I'd be like slamming 2 burritos, I'd finish, I'd have like burgers for dinner, then I'd eat like a whole tub of connoisseur ice cream, which I'm not sure if you have, but I'd get the Cafe Grande and just like smash like a you know, like a liter tub of ice cream, and I'd wake up and I'd like be weighing less. And not that I was ever a professional athlete, I'm definitely not, but just the level of activity trying to get things in is so hard to get those calories in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm only, to put out that, I'm only about 56 kilograms, and I'm female as well, and I train like not every day, but relatively, and I would eat probably like 3,300 calories, around that amount every day.
Really?
Yeah. Just to deal with the jiu-jitsu and the weightlifting. And I'm breastfeeding as well. And I think the reason I share that is because a lot of my clients are quite shocked. A lot of the females especially, they're having more like 1,800 or 1,500 to lose body fat, and it's just not enough.
How do you get in 3,300 calories?
It's a lot of time. It's good. No, it's good. It's a good problem to have. But it's a lot of eating. Like even snacks become like meals. You know, regularly, and you're having to think about like, let's add some olive oil to that, let's add avocado, so, you know, and then it's not a case of guilting if you want a piece of chocolate cake, that's actually good, becomes good for you in this context. But under fueling is a big issue.
Yeah, actually, I did have that as a question that I wanted to, and like while we're talking about it, we may as well jump into it. Like, what does a day on a plate look like for you? Just out of curiosity, and now, you know, with the calorie intake, I'd love to know how you get all those calories in. But yeah, what does a day on a plate look like for you? Because I guess I'm interested because I've been starting to think about gut health more. When I was younger, it was more, you know, if it fits your macros, let's go. You know, I still love burgers and ice cream and stuff like that. And I'm not, you know, I'll definitely have them every now and then. But I used to be more like, it doesn't matter. Just eat whatever and just make it work. If it fits, it fits. Krispy Kreme donut, whatever. And because I have such a high calorie intake, I can fit those things in, and it literally doesn't affect me. But now I kind of look back at that, and I'm unsure if it actually affected me, but now I'm more worried about things like that, like gut health, and I'm trying to eat better. I'm trying to have more fermented foods. I'm trying to have less kind of just like low fat, high protein foods that are just like protein jammed into foods that probably shouldn't have that much protein. You know, I'm trying to have like I'm like, this year's kind of like my full fat year. Like I'm having like full fat yogurt, full fat milk. It sounds really dumb. So I'm curious as to what you have.
Yeah, but no, thanks for sharing that, because again, I think we come from that same generation where it was like literally, even I call Coke full fat Coke, it doesn't even have any fat in it. Where has that come from? And if you had a normal Coke, like what was it going to do? Absolutely nothing. And yet we were like spent so much time with this, and so many of my clients are also having these like high protein foods that they've got processed foods throughout their day, but because it's high protein, they think it's healthier. So yeah, a day on the plate. I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about portions because I don't want that to come like overly triggering for people, because we already talked about weight and things like that. But typically for me, bearing in mind I'm the other side of IBS and that I know what my triggers are, I've like come a long way in terms of building my gut back up, would be I always start the day with oats. So like, which is really boring for my clients as well. I'm obsessed with oats because it's such a good start to the day and it's such versatile. And everyone's like, Kirsten, is there anything else here? But no, like a massive bowl of oats, full fat milk on there, peanut butter, some fruit as well, and then normally like seeds and nuts as well. And like bearing in mind my day's really long as well, so I'll be probably consuming that when I first wake up at like 5:30, 6 in the morning. And then I normally have like some fluid with that as well. That's your most dehydrated point. So it's really, really important to know if you're having that much fiber. If you're not drinking fluid, then you're going to end up running into problems.
So
and
do you have your, sorry to jump in, do you have your fluid...
No,
do you have something before you eat, or do you eat and have it like together? Because
just have it together.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. No, just because I wake up and I have like my because we do jiu-jitsu. Like I have, I had Jordan Sullivan on my podcast, who has a company called Train Aid, And he does like weight cuts for UFC fighters like Alex Volkanovski, Israel Adesanya, and all this kind of stuff. So, and he has this kind of saying where you hydrate before you caffeinate. So I just got into this habit of, like, I use it when I do jiu-jitsu, but he has this thing called Train Aid, kind of like Powerade powder type of thing, but it has all the electrolytes. So I have that first thing in the morning, and then I eat or have my coffee and stuff. So I'm just curious. That's it. I'm trying to pick up tips.
Yeah, no, I would say that my level of jiu-jitsu is nowhere near that to warrant, to be fair.
I just feel like if I felt a massive difference. I know we're not talking about jiu-jitsu, but we keep talking. I keep bringing it back every time. But like the difference between me training with electrolytes and without was actually quite big, because like our sessions go for like an hour and a half, and they can be pretty full on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I would typically have electrolytes, but with the training, and then sometimes another electrolyte afterwards. I'm like replacing the fluids at the time. That's the way I would do it. With that. And it really depends with sports, like how much you sweat, etc., how intense it is. So if by the way, if anyone listening, if you're doing a normal gym session, you probably don't need electrolytes with that one. Yeah. But if you're sweating a lot, you do. So yes, I'd have the oats, and then depending on what I'm doing, because my day really varies a lot depending on if I'm going to jiu-jitsu, if I'm just coming home from a whole work day at home. But normally I would then go and drop the kids off, then go to jiu-jitsu about 8:20, and then come back, and normally I'm having a snack which would ironically be seen as probably fairly unhealthy. It can be something like a croissant with some fruit, and then maybe like a piece of toast with like chocolate spread on it, something like that. And the reason I'm doing that is just to get the calorie content in there, just because if I have just fibre and just healthy foods, I will end up so bloated by the end of the day. But if you're trying to consume loads and loads of fibre, and again, this is a mistake a lot of people do, they're like, I must have just fruits, just vegetables, just whole grains, and it's great, but there's a balance to that with that one as well. And then usually like a smoothie as well. So sometimes with the smoothies there's some fruit. And then lunchtime can really vary for me. Completely, to be honest. I normally just have leftovers from the night before. So things like just typical, family dinners like stews and potatoes. This is very British, sorry. Spaghetti bolognese.
I think potatoes are so underrated. Like potatoes got so much abuse for being a carbohydrate, when I feel like potatoes popped off at the wrong time. I feel like if they popped off in 2026, like they would get the love that they need. And I always kind of bring up the satiety index study around like how filling they actually are. And this is kind of for the opposite idea for you. You probably just eat them because you like them. But a lot of people that do overeat, that are looking for like foods that fill them up, I'm like, have some potatoes. They're really good. They're like, oh, I can't eat potatoes. I might have sweet potato, but I can't eat potato. I'm like, man. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I've got Irish blood in me, so we can't not have potatoes.
Exactly,
this is serious.
It's serious stuff.
It is indeed. You've never been at your mother-in-law's house where they're discussing the flavour of the potato they just bought. That's
really? I didn't even know that was a conversation you could have.
No, neither did I, so there you go. So that would be normally lunch, and then I am normally then back to work, and then afternoon I have to go and pick up the kids from school, and then it is something else with them. So typically they have their dinner like super early, so probably about 4 o'clock we're like eating again. And then I will put them to bed. My husband comes in, and I'm trying to think of my day, so I don't need all this detail, but I'm just trying to think of like when I would next eat.
Yeah.
And then I'm normally having like a kind of another snack, probably about 6-ish. No, later than that, sorry, about 7, 8-ish, which can be anything. It can be like quite a large bowl of yogurt with granola, some fruit, some seeds again, or it can be, depending if we've had certain like treat type foods, like a big piece of cake and a cup of tea, something like this. So it's not as healthy, but again, is what I need. It's fine. I'm trying to think of other things. So that's probably about it. So typically like 3 meals per day, but then having like 2 to 3 substantial snacks in there as well. And it just really varies. But for me, I'm not very rigid in what I'm eating, as you can tell. I'm like, I don't know, it depends, it varies. But I am in some ways, in that I'm always making sure at that lunch and evening meal, at least 1/3 of the plate is fibre. And that as a non-negotiable, because otherwise I end up just getting like super constipated. And by fibre I mean your vegetables, not so much salad. I'm not really a salad lover, I'll be honest. I like hot meals with cooked veggies. And there's always a whole grain. So I'm celiac, so whole grains are more trickier. I can't have like the lovely wholemeal bread everyone else can manage. But things like quinoa, buckwheat, even some gluten-free pasta sometimes, which is not as high quality, but it's ticking a gap in terms of giving me some carbs. And then there's always protein. So the protein can be anything from like the fish, chicken, sometimes red meat, but I'm trying to reduce that intake down. It's not overly good for our gut, so we do have it. Again, it's not strict rules, which I am really strong on. I don't like the idea of rules unless it's really necessary. And then really using a lot of olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocado, so getting those healthy fats in as well.
And what about coffee? Do you drink coffee?
Coffee, yeah, coffee's an interesting one. I'm glad you brought it up because I know you touched on it kind of before. So coffee, I love coffee, and I was on my high horse about this, going, you know what, you don't need it, you just need more sleep, like if you just slept more, blah blah. So I went for like a whole year without having it. I've literally got a cup here that I'm nursing.
Yeah, I've just smashed mine throughout the podcast. Yeah.
So coffee, and then I started drinking it a couple of months ago again. I was like, I'm like a nice person. I think I need this back in my life. So yeah, sorry
delete
about that.
Delete video.
Yeah, exactly. Very patronising part of that. But no, coffee is fine. And coffee itself is actually really good for gut function. So we know it's really high in polyphenols, which are like antioxidants for the gut. So it's really, really good. Where people with IBS might have a problem is twofold. So one, caffeine can actually trigger the gut to move. So if your gut's really sensitive, especially if you've got looser stools, that's not going to be good. Some people who have constipation, it can be helpful for. But number two, if you have anxiety, caffeine can make it worse. And if anxiety is not good, your gut's not going to be good. So what I found, just a good balance for me, and of course this is all very individual, is I can manage one caffeinated coffee a day, but I normally have it around 10 o'clock, which means that it's not in line with when my cortisol would rise. So when we wake up in the morning, our stress hormone cortisol is really high. This is normal. It's not abnormal. It's normal to have high cortisol in the morning. But that is like a stress hormone in terms of it gets us moving around. The last thing we want to do is have caffeine on top of that, because that can then lead to more anxiety, more stress. You are much better having it a few hours after you've woken up, where your cortisol starts to dip down, and then you get the added benefit of having another little mental boost without going over the top. But equally, it's far enough away from your sleep that it's not then impacting your sleep. So for me, one coffee a day is fine, and it's the time of it. So I wouldn't increase it more than that. You can get your polyphenols, the benefit from decaf coffee as well.
Right. So if you have coffee too late, does it keep you up?
Yeah. So me personally, yes, and then everybody else from the research, yeah. And again, there's no real outliers in this. Some people, they say, oh, it doesn't affect me, etc. It might well be that you're so tired you get to sleep, but for sure it's impacting the quality of your sleep at the very minimum. There's no way around this. And some people are actually more reactive to it. So even one cup of coffee, they digest or they metabolize much slower than maybe the general population. So I would say to you, if you're in the trenches of IBS and you have got really no control, it's really bad, it might be something that you temporarily at least cut out and do it slowly, not overnight. And then you can look at, when you get to a better place, bringing it back in. But it does impact you negatively in a number of ways, potentially.
While I was listening to your book, I wanted to bring up this photo. So if you're just listening to this podcast, you won't be able to see it. But if you're on YouTube, you can see the Bristol stool chart. So this is like, if you're eating chocolate mousse, probably look away. But this is basically just a stool chart of what I guess different types of poo that people have. So I kind of just wanted you to run through it, and just kind of, because you did in your book, and it was helpful to me because there was like a difference of like if you're just this type or just that type, or if you're both this and that, like, because I think a lot of people don't really know what to look for when they're looking at their poo, and I don't either, but I think it's interesting. So I know you don't need me to hold this up here, but I think if people, and you've probably got a better one, this is just the first one I found, but can you break down the Bristol stool chart for us? That would be really cool.
Yeah, sure. And anyone can Google this. It's free. You can get it online. But Bristol stool chart is what we call a validated tool. So it's how we categorize your poo. But lovely kind of conversation. And you're quite right. Nobody ever told us as kids. I don't remember my mum talking about any of these subjects. Like, what does your poop look like? But it can tell us so much. So you've got type 1 to type 3 there. So it's type 1 to type 7 is the range. Type 1 to type 3 is what we would see as more of a constipated profile. Type 4 is like your perfect poop. And then type 5 5 to type 7 would be more of a looser stool, so more like diarrhea or looser. Now, I would just say before I go into each one, you are never in your life going to have a perfect poo every single day for the rest of your life. This is not what it's about, having a type 5 stool one day and running to the doctors or panicking, but it's about generally it should be a type 4. Okay, so if you are noticing actually it's always not a type 4, that's where you might have some problems. So type 1 is like your rabbit drop-ins, and that's where you're very, very constipated, indicating you don't have enough fluid or fibre to help bulk up the stools, because what fibre will do is draw in fluid to get you nice bulky stools, which is then easier for your gut to push out essentially. Okay, then you've got number 2 and number 3, which are sort of variations of that, I guess, but as they become drier, as they move towards the type 1. So it just could be that you're just a little bit lower in the fibre, a little bit lower in the fluid, and you can increase those a little bit. And then your type 5 to 6 and type 7. Type 7 is really actually abnormal in IBS. Type 7 is just liquid stool, and it does indicate more things like an infection or something called bile acid diarrhea. So if that does happen, then please, let your doctor know. Sometimes people will get the type 1, type 2, and then get type 7, and that's an indication you have what we call overflow diarrhea. So that's when you get really, really constipated, and then the stool that's coming down will essentially have to go over that to get out. So it looks like you've got loose stools. People go and get medications panically from their doctor because they think they've got all these loose stools, when actually their problem is constipation. So if it's mostly constipation, then you get this liquid stool, it's because you've got something in there that's really dry and impacted. And then type 5, type 6 it could be related to dietary intake, so like FODMAPs. It could be related to lack of fibre. Interestingly, sometimes if you don't have enough fibre, again, you're not going to be able to produce those bulky stools, or even things like stress, anxiety, anything that's drawing more water or making things move through your gut quicker is going to cause the loose stools. And just want to reiterate what we said at the start about IBS. You do need to go and get tests. So if you're looking at this chart and going, oh yes, I probably have IBS and my stool is this type, you still cannot diagnose from that. You have to go, because yes, you might have IBS, but you could also have celiac disease or inflammatory bowel disease, an infection. Even bowel cancer is unfortunately on the rise. So let's not guess. Go and get those tests done from the doctor.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Do you have any kind of inklings or like what the research says as to why it may be on the rise?
Yeah, so it's on the rise in people who are younger as well, which is unusual, and they're now changing the guidelines, and I can't remember at the top of my head because the guidelines used to be, I think it was like 50, where they started to do colonoscopies routinely, and they're now like, well, actually this isn't cool because we're seeing that there's a huge rise in the younger populations now. I don't know. I think the problem with cancers is that most of the time they're multifactorial. So by the time we get an answer, it's going to be a long time. It's not going to be a case of there's one thing in our diet or there's one element in the atmosphere. Because we all know, of course, those people that smoked till they were 100 or drank, or it's always multifactorial. I actually wonder sometimes if it's to do with processed food, because I know I'm in that category now where I'm 36 now, so the rates of bowel cancer risk are going up in that age bracket. And I know when we were kids, it was sort of around the time where they were bringing in more processed food, straight from the freezer into the oven. And I don't know whether it's just that we've now hit that age where a lot of people in that generation have been having now processed foods all their life, potentially. And when I say processed foods, obviously there's foods in that category that are fine, like tinned tomatoes are fine, but I don't know, and I don't know if we're going to know for a while.
Actually, I have a question about the younger generation that I didn't really send through, but I'll just ask this and then we'll jump into the final 3 questions. Do you think, because I've realized when I've spent a little bit of time or just engaged at the gym with younger people, sometimes some teenagers come up and be like, oh, I see you doing an exercise, who taught you that, or can you teach me that? But they're on their phone so much, they kind of struggle with chatting, and that has not much to do with I guess them, but I just think they spend so much time online, they're on their phone a lot, and they're sleeping less, and they're kind of living through their life on their phone. Is that in some way, shape or form making people with IBS that you see kind of getting younger, just because they are sleeping less and kind of stressing more or being more anxious because they're on their phones and having this kind of online digital life more, because those were the foundations that you were talking about at the start, not really training. not sleeping, stressing a lot. And that is quite a lot of, like, I find, like, younger people coming up. Are you seeing the age kind of drop, or is that not? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I personally haven't seen the age drop, but I'm seeing those issues come in more in when we're talking. So as a dietitian, when I talk to my clients, I explain how I go about it. I actually am like really nosy in that I look into all aspects of their life, their patterns, etc., because everything will impact their gut function. And what I'm seeing is that probably not so much teenage, I wouldn't say there's a rise in people with IBS when they're younger, but I am seeing there's a huge rise in issues with phones in general, from everything. It's like this human connection. It's almost giving them like a false sense that they do have a connection, but then it's stopping them from going out. And it's the same with like COVID. A lot of people that I'm working with are like, they felt like they were connected online with people and they're working from home and it's all online, and then now COVID is finished, they haven't been able to go back, so they're very lonely. It's impacting mental health rates. And interesting, there is some stats, so with teenagers, specifically teenage girls, I'm sure it's with male as well, but this is where the stats show, is that there's an increased risk of like eating disorders with this information online. And we know eating disorders can often present as digestive problems because they're not eating enough, they end up with these food restrictions. So I think the more access they're going to have with that, I do think we will start to see research where there's more, because anything around eating disorders and anything around mental health will ultimately end up with poor digestive function.
Yeah, it's scary, man. It's scary. I kind of, like, you know, you and I see it, we're posting online, but I don't personally spend a ton of time scrolling or consuming it, but I get a little bit worried, to be honest, about our children and what kind of world they're coming into. And especially, like, well, my daughters, they're a bit too young to understand, but I use my phone a lot for work. I use my laptop a lot. They come on and they, you know, type off these emails that I never send out. But it's just, I don't know. I know this is not what we were going to talk about, but it's a little bit scary with that stuff. To wrap up the podcast, I like to ask for a quote, a book, and a habit, because I'm deep into self-help. I love it. I think I'm kind of growing out of it as I get older, but when I was younger, it really opened my eyes and taught me a lot. And sometimes quotes hit and they feel like they're made for you at that time. Or a book, like someone recommends a book and you're like, oh, okay, I'll read it. And then it kind of, for that chapter of your life, it was perfect. So I like to give that opportunity for you to kind of share those in case people can pick them up. So we'll start off with your quote.
Yeah, so the quote, and I'm not sure, I can't remember where this is from, so it might not be inspiring, but the quote in terms of it is, stop overlooking the simple things. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's coming from a place where I feel like we overcomplicate stuff, and I don't know if it's because we're looking at all these things online and trying to find this one magical miracle thing for all our health, all our lifestyle, but often it's the simple things. It's the real simple things that are right in front of us that we've missed. So stop overlooking the simple things. And then in terms of books, books is my favourite book would always be by Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. I don't know if you've read it.
You know what? I bought it for a client because he doesn't sleep enough. He's like an on-call doctor, which sometimes he can't help, but I gave it to him as a gift, but I haven't read it myself. So I should probably read it. But yeah, what did you take away from it? Because I've heard it's a goldmine.
Yeah, it's really good. So it goes back to the simple things. It is really intense, I'll be honest. Like, it's a lot of science in there. So if anyone does find like it's sort of book you buy and you're not going to read, get the audiobook, get the summary, like just get the main points from it. It's really good. But it's just about the thing that I found the most astounding from all the research, and there's so much research out there, is how obsessed doctors are, researchers are, trainers are, everybody in health around nutrition, around aesthetics, mental health even is now becoming like a new thing. Like, we're all really pleased to see mental health being addressed, and yet sleep is the fundamentally core thing we need for survival, and yet no one's really talking about it. I couldn't believe it. And I mean, like, the stuff in there, it was like looking at right through from being a child to an adolescent to an adult or older adult, all the problems linked back to sleep. It was honestly mind-blowing.
So how did that affect you? Like, did you have a poor relationship with sleep previously, or
yeah, I guess
did it make you go to bed an hour earlier type of thing?
Yeah, it's. Do you know what it's made me do? It's made me prioritize sleep, not just for my health, but for my business and for my kids as well. So I would always probably put sleep down there as it's a nice thing to have rather than a. And now in my work week, I will literally move clients around or manage my week based on actually, all right, I've got an event that's really late at night, so the next day I'm going to have to really prioritize that, because I've noticed that otherwise nothing else works. Whereas before I would have just been like, oh well, it's another late night, I need to finish this email off, or you know what, I'll catch up at the weekend. It was always on the nice thing to do, the same way as like drinking your waters, but now it's become like top of the list above everything else.
Nice. And what about a habit or something you do every day, or something that you do that helps to make your life better?
Every day is exercise every single day. And I would say that like probably from my early 20s, I've always been quite active, but not, as I said, I was one of those people who probably went to the gym a few times and then didn't move in between. Whereas now, even if I've got a really heavy workload, and I do work a lot of hours, so if I've got a day where I've got to work 12 hours, I will still go out for that 30-minute walk. And it's every day. It's a religious thing. And it isn't so much in a negative eating disorder way. It's more like a positive. It doesn't matter what it is. It will be something. And even if I'm traveling for work, even if I go into the hotel gym, which can be questionable at times, I will walk on a treadmill and listen to a podcast, or I will just do some stretches in front of Netflix, whatever. But it is a non-negotiable that I do at least 30 minutes of movement per day.
And is there anything that you do while you walk? Like you mentioned, you listen to a podcast on a treadmill, but like when you're out walking, do you just look around? Do you have nothing on? Do you consume stuff? Do you flick off emails? Do you call people? Do you send messages?
Yeah, so I've recently changed this. I used to listen to Alex Hormozy podcast because I was like, I need to learn about business and this needs to be productive. And now I was like, this is ridiculous. And also, it's got such high level. I think it's gone beyond where I'm at in my business, to be honest. But I now try to be mindful. So I actually don't go out with my music, and I know this is hard for a lot of people to do. But I will listen to the birds and things like this, and I will look at what's around me, feel what the temperature's like. It's almost like a walking meditation is when I'm doing that, and it's especially helpful, to be honest, when I'm with my kids. It sounds a bit strange, but I've got an 8-month-old baby, and I find that when I'm with him, I could easily, because he's just happy to be out, he doesn't even know where he is, I could just put my headphones in and just walk. But now I'll be speaking to him and I don't know, just being a little bit more mindful rather than having to be another productive 30 minutes. And interestingly, when you speak to psychologists, a lot of people will think that, their daily commute is really good for them because they'll walk into London or walk into wherever they are in Sydney, for example, to get to the office. And yes, their overall steps are great, but they're not really getting the same benefit as if they had gone for a lunchtime 30-minute walk on their own. It's very different psychologically. So just something to think about. And I know it's a bit like meditation. It's very hard because we just get bored within about 2 minutes. Our brain is not being fed. But it's just thinking about little things. And there are some things you can download, some walking meditations, for example, you can listen to if your brain just really isn't going to play ball. Or it could be that you do what we call noting. So you can do things like you note how, I don't know, the trainers feel on your feet, what the temperature is like. And it sounds really silly, but often we go through our day and we don't even know how we got to work. We need to note these things. It just brings us back to center.
Yeah, I think that's great. I laugh because it does sound really lame, but I have this really lame thing that I do when I wake up. I started this before it was cool, but I used to I started a gratitude list when I was 14 years old, and I would just now it's in my notes. I just keep adding to it as I think of things, or and as I've had kids now. I add them on the list, and I just kind of run through it. And I list everything that I'm thankful for, and then I kind of list things that I'm striving for, just to keep them at the front of my mind. Mm-hmm. And then I list off all these quotes that pump me up and that make me feel excited and enthusiastic. And then I also have these kind of self affirmations, I am this, I am that, to kind of remind myself of who I want to be. And if someone said that to me, I'd already be rolling my eyes because I'm like, mate, this sounds like some hippie bullshit. But it really has, I see it as it kind of makes me steal. It makes me it helps you to remember who you are, or if you're not who you want to be, it kind of puts you in that position, because we often don't say I am generous. It sounds super dumb. But it does keep at the forefront of your mind, I might get that person coffee, or before I go, I might just ask them, hey, do you want me to get you one while I'm there? And if you say I'm generous at the start of the day, I feel like that can kind of like put it at the forefront of your mind. I don't know. It's just, I think the cheesy things work is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, just setting your intentions. And you know what? Sometimes in life, like if you're saying, oh, someone might roll their eyes, like, who cares? Like, if something is working for you and you're obviously doing well in life, who cares? And I think as you get older, and maybe it's because I failed at so many things when I was younger, I've stopped caring what other people think, or like, whatever. And equally, if someone is telling you to do something like what we've said in this podcast, like with the mental side of things, like I've got clients who do a meditation every day and it becomes like a tick box, like I did my meditation, but they're not getting any benefit. Stop that and move on, like it has to just be a little bit more analytical. If something is working for you, fab, continue on. But if it isn't, get rid of it and don't care what people think, because most people who actually are, if they judge you, then they're normally the losers in life, let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, Kirsten, thanks so much for jumping on. Like I said, I'm halfway through your book. I will finish it, but it's been really insightful. The things like and even as someone who hasn't gone through what you have written about, I do coach people who have like vast kind of different problems with their gut. Maybe all the way there, maybe not, or maybe there's some recommendations I can just make to like try and improve their gut health before they run into things, which is what I found. But I love your stuff online as well. It's really good to have some evidence-based. Once again, fighting the good fight, not selling bullshit scammy supplements. I really appreciate you, and it's been a great conversation. Where can people find you? Where can people get your book? And where do you want to send them?
Send them to jiu-jitsu. No,
yeah, let's bring it back to jiu-jitsu.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. So yeah, if anyone wants information about IBS, there's a couple of places. So Instagram's probably the best. It's at the .IBS Dietitian. And if you search the IBS Dietitian online, there's literally thousands of free blog articles on my website and downloads and stuff that people can get. And my book is available on Amazon or probably in shops as well in Australia or like America, UK, it's worldwide. It's called Take Control of Your IBS, the step-by-step guide that actually works. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Kirsten.